What if the people who should have loved and protected their children the most turned out to be the true monsters hiding in plain sight? In a seemingly ordinary neighborhood, behind the closed doors of a pristine suburban home, a family harbored chilling secrets that would horrify even the most seasoned investigators. A mother and father, trusted and respected, orchestrated a nightmare so dark that it left their children pleading for help in silence, and the entire community questioning how they missed the signs of pure evil lurking among them. The Johnsons seemed like the epitome of a perfect family. Living on Willow Creek Drive, their charming suburban home boasted a manicured lawn, a white picket fence, and flower boxes that always bloomed in vibrant colors. To the neighbors, Daniel and Sarah Johnson were hardworking parents raising their two children, Lily and Ethan, in an ideal environment. Daniel was a manager at a local hardware store, known for his firm but friendly demeanor, while Sarah was a stay at home mom, often seen waving cheerfully as she gardened or walked the kids to school. The children, Lily with her golden curls and Ethan with his shy smile, were well liked by their classmates and teachers, though whispers of concern had occasionally surfaced. Over time, subtle cracks began to appear in the Johnsons' perfect facade, but they were easily dismissed. Teachers noted that Lily often seemed tired, her usual vibrant spirit dimmed. Ethan, on the other hand, had become increasingly withdrawn, rarely making eye contact or participating in class discussions. When bruises and scratches appeared on their small bodies, Sarah always had an explanation ready. Lily was clumsy, constantly tripping or falling, while Ethan was a rough and tumble boy who loved playing outside. Her warmth and insistence were convincing, and the concerns were brushed aside. Even when an anonymous call was made to social services, suggesting that something sinister might be happening behind the pristine walls of the Johnson home, the case was closed after a brief inspection. The social worker found nothing amiss, just a neat, organized home with polite children who seemed well fed and a mother who presented herself as caring and attentive. What no one could see was the terror hiding behind the children's eyes. They were too afraid to speak up, knowing the consequences of disobedience. Every moment inside that house was dictated by their parents' strict rules, and punishment for even the smallest infraction was swift and severe. But to the outside world, the Johnsons remained flawless. They hosted barbecues, attended church on Sundays, and participated in community events. It wasn't until years later, when a neighbor peered into their backyard late one night and saw Daniel digging feverishly under the moonlight, that the horrifying truth about the family began to emerge, leaving everyone to wonder how such darkness could have been so expertly concealed. The disappearance of 8-year-old Lily Johnson sent shockwaves through the quiet community. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon when Sarah Johnson called the police, her voice trembling as she reported her daughter missing. According to Sarah, Lily had run away after a heated argument over cleaning her room. The story seemed plausible enough, and soon the entire neighborhood joined the search. Volunteers combed through parks, wooded areas, and nearby creeks, while police distributed flyers with Lily's bright smile and golden curls. For weeks, the town was gripped with worry, but as time passed without any leads, hope began to wane. The Johnsons held candlelight vigils and tearfully pleaded on television for Lily's safe return, their anguish tugging at the heartstrings of everyone who watched. Despite their public display of grief, something about the Johnsons' behavior unsettled the investigators. There were inconsistencies in their timeline, and neighbors began to recall odd occurrences that hadn't seemed significant before. One neighbor remembered seeing Lily crying in the backyard just days before she vanished. Another mentioned hearing muffled screams late at night, but assumed it was just children playing. But the most disturbing account came from a woman who lived behind the Johnsons. She reported seeing Daniel digging in the backyard one evening, long after the sun had set. At the time, she dismissed it as routine gardening, but now it struck her as suspicious. Acting on this tip, police obtained a search warrant for the property. What they found left even the most seasoned officers shaken. In the backyard, beneath a newly planted rose garden, investigators unearthed a shallow grave. Inside were charred fragments of bone and scraps of fabric that matched the clothes Lily had been wearing the day she disappeared. The Johnsons' serene garden, once a source of envy for the neighbors, had been hiding a horrific secret. DNA testing confirmed the remains belonged to Lily, and the community was plunged into grief and disbelief. How could the parents, who had appeared so devoted and heartbroken, be capable of such a heinous act? As the investigation deepened, it became clear that Lily's death wasn't an accident, nor was it the first sign of trouble in the Johnson household. The discovery opened the floodgates to a torrent of horrifying revelations that would haunt everyone who had ever called the Johnsons friends. The basement was a horrifying tableau of pain and suffering, a hidden chamber of cruelty that seemed to radiate the despair it had witnessed. As investigators carefully documented the scene, they uncovered more than just physical evidence of abuse. Along with the rusted chains and the filthy mattress, they found small, chilling reminders of Lily's futile attempts to hold on to her childhood. A battered teddy bear lay discarded in one corner, its fur matted and eyes missing, while a stack of crumpled papers revealed crude drawings of a family, a little girl standing apart from two tall figures who loomed ominously over her. The artwork told a silent story of fear and isolation, a testament to Lily's reality that no words could adequately capture. Near the drawings was the notebook, its faded cover held together by tape. Inside, Lily's entries grew increasingly frantic as the pages progressed. The early notes, written in shaky but hopeful handwriting, spoke of longing for her parents' approval. "I'll be better tomorrow," one entry read. "If I make no mistakes, maybe mommy will hug me." But as time went on, the tone shifted. The entries became darker, filled with descriptions of punishments that went far beyond discipline. She wrote about being left in the dark for hours, her cries ignored, and the physical pain she endured when her parents deemed her behavior unacceptable. "I don't understand why they hate me," she scribbled on one page, the ink smudged by what appeared to be tears. The final entries were the most harrowing, chronicling her growing realization that she might not survive her parents' wrath. One of the last pages contained a chilling sentence: "I think they're waiting for me to disappear." This cryptic note, paired with the conditions of the basement, painted a grim picture of premeditation. Investigators began to suspect that Lily's death was not an accident, but a deliberate act of violence born out of a twisted sense of control and cruelty. Adding to the horror was the evidence that Ethan, Lily's older brother, had also been subjected to unimaginable torment. The chains on the opposite wall had been adjusted to a larger size, and a second, equally filthy mattress was found nearby. It was clear that this wasn't just a single instance of abuse, but a calculated, ongoing nightmare inflicted on both children. The basement wasn't just a place of punishment. It was a chamber of unspeakable horrors where innocence was systematically destroyed, leaving behind a legacy of terror that would shock even the most hardened investigators. When Sarah Johnson was brought in for questioning, investigators were prepared for denials and excuses, but nothing could have prepared them for what she said. Sitting in the stark interrogation room, her demeanor was disturbingly calm. Her hands rested lightly on the table, and her voice was steady as she began to unravel the twisted ideology she and her husband had crafted. She spoke of their belief in purification through pain, a grotesque philosophy they had convinced themselves was justified. According to Sarah, they viewed their children as flawed, tainted by the sins of the world, and it was their duty as parents to cleanse them. At first, Sarah claimed they hadn't intended to kill Lily, describing the punishments as discipline taken too far. But as the questioning continued, her calm exterior began to crack, revealing the monstrous truth beneath. She described in chilling detail how they had deliberately singled out Lily, branding her as the weak one. Punishments escalated from verbal beratings to physical beatings, and eventually to locking her in the basement for days on end without food or water. What started as twisted parental discipline became something far darker, driven by their need for control and their growing disdain for the child they had brought into the world. Daniel's interrogation was even more disturbing. Unlike Sarah, he showed no emotion, speaking in a cold, detached manner. He described Lily's death as an inevitable outcome, a necessary sacrifice in their quest for purification. He admitted to orchestrating the punishments and forcing Sarah to participate, though it was clear she was not a reluctant accomplice. His voice remained steady as he recounted the night Lily died, explaining how they had left her chained in the basement without water for days as punishment for disobedience. When they found her unconscious, instead of calling for help, they decided to dispose of her body to avoid scrutiny. He spoke of burning her remains and burying them in the garden as if it were a routine chore, devoid of any remorse. Their confessions left investigators shaken to their core. There was no sign of guilt or regret, only a chilling justification of their actions. It was as if they had convinced themselves they were the victims, burdened by the weight of parenting unworthy children. The lack of humanity in their words painted a harrowing picture of the evil that had festered within their home, leaving no doubt about the deliberate and calculated nature of their crimes. The trial of Daniel and Sarah Johnson became a national spectacle, with people across the country gripped by the unimaginable cruelty that had unfolded behind the closed doors of their seemingly perfect home. Courtroom spectators sat in stunned silence as the prosecution laid out the horrifying evidence. Photos of the basement were displayed, showing the rusted chains, the stained mattress, and Lily's haunting notebook. Each image painted a vivid picture of the nightmare the children had endured, while expert witnesses testified about the long-term physical and psychological effects of such relentless abuse. The prosecution argued that Lily's death was not the result of negligence or an accidental escalation of punishment, but a calculated act by parents who saw their children as objects to control rather than individuals to love. Sarah's defense attempted to paint her as a victim of Daniel's domineering personality, claiming she had been coerced into participating in the abuse. Her attorneys argued that years of psychological manipulation had left her incapable of protecting her children, let alone standing up to her husband. But this narrative fell apart when the prosecution presented her interrogation footage where she had calmly described her role in the punishments without a hint of remorse. It was clear she had been a willing participant, fully complicit in the torment inflicted on Lily and Ethan. Daniel, on the other hand, displayed no emotion throughout the trial. His cold, unrepentant demeanor further solidified his image as the mastermind behind the horrors. When he took the stand, his lack of remorse shocked even the most seasoned observers. He described his actions as necessary and claimed he was merely teaching his children discipline. His chilling testimony only deepened the public's outrage as it became clear that he viewed his monstrous behavior as justified. The jury took less than 3 hours to deliberate. Both Daniel and Sarah were found guilty on multiple charges, including first-degree murder, child abuse, and unlawful imprisonment. The judge, in his sentencing, did not hold back, condemning them as the embodiment of evil and handing down life sentences without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in applause as justice was finally served, though the victory felt hollow for many. Ethan, the sole survivor of the Johnsons' reign of terror, was placed in protective custody and later adopted by a family far from Willow Creek Drive. Though he would carry the scars of his trauma for the rest of his life, there was hope that he could find some semblance of peace. But for the community, the case left an indelible mark, a chilling reminder of how monsters can hide in plain sight, masquerading as the people we trust the most.